Good evening, and welcome to my house.
I have met Steven a few times over the last 15 years, but I have known him. I have known him, and I have recognized him since I saw a nearly wordless film called Duel in 1971. Since then, I have not missed one film, nor, dare I say, have most in this room ever missed a film. What a legacy they collectively represent. You know, you've also made a lot of films about the future, or fantasies, or dystopian visions, things that are fantastical. And I'd like you to talk about that, because they seem to fit seamlessly within your body of work, and yet, because we're archivists and people who love archives and use the archives here, we want to focus correctly on the history stuff. But you know, you've made so many extraordinary films that are not that. They're looking over the horizon with great vision and complexity.
Well, there's, you know, the kinds of movies that I've made just strictly from the imagination. I mean, that is an entirely different genre of film. So, and fortunately, those movies gave me the wherewithal and gave me the leverage to be able to make historical, dramas. I couldn't have made Lincoln without the success of E.T. I couldn't have made Amistad without, like the success of the Raiders of the Lost Ark series, the Indiana Jones adventures. So, in a sense, but when I was younger, the only thing that really interested me were the things that couldn't exist, for me in real life. The creatures I couldn't go out and say hello to and meet, the characters that were impossible to find because they just simply didn't exist outside of the id. So for me, that was what started everything for me. I mean, I was always interested in history, but that part of, because there's something so unfettered about being able to dream a dream, and that suddenly a year later, people were looking at something you just thought of in the middle of the night, and that's weird. It's weird, but it's really, really cool. Very, very gratifying. It's very cool.
It is very cool.
To be able to, and that's where all inventions basically do come from. They just come from a spark.
Yes.
It all starts, to me, I've always said that my best ideas are whispered in my ear. And I've had ideas that I didn't listen to, and 4 years later, I see my idea coming out of somebody else's camera, and I realize if I don't act on the whispers, if I don't listen carefully enough to what whispers, it doesn't shout at you, an idea only whispers out. If I don't listen to that, some other lucky person is going to, that idea is not going to, it's going to give up on me. It's going to float around out there, and just say, okay, I think I'm coming into his or her life right now. And that's what happens. So I'm very, very careful to always listen very carefully.
Can you talk a little bit about all of the voices and all of the emotions swirling within that, and where it took you? And
well, Schindler's, I avoided Schindler's for 10 years. I ran away from it. Sid Sheinberg, the head of Universal, found the book. E.T. had just come out in theaters. It was a big success. And Sid called me, I thought, to tell me what the grosses were in Nicaragua or in Bolivia, because we were getting a lot of South American reports, and he said, I'd read a review of a book in the New York Times book review section called Schindler's Ark by Thomas Keneally. I think this is right up your alley. He sent me the article, and then the book showed up on my desk Monday morning. And when I read the book, I was absolutely terrified, because he was throwing the weight of responsibility into my lap that I was not ready in 1982 I just was not ready to encounter it. It was just the wrong time for me. And I was terrified that if I told that story wrong and I did anything to create any semblance of what we commonly refer to as entertainment,
right,
I would not be able to survive. And in my family, with my mom and dad, with my sisters, Sue is here today, my sister Sue, So I avoided it, and I spent 10 years avoiding Schindler's List. What really was the breakthrough for me was The Color Purple, because The Color Purple was the first film that didn't have special effects, that didn't have action set pieces, that didn't have a lot of homages to other great filmmakers' achievements, but was a pure character study, and spoke to me on a very conversational level about what I hate about racism, between whites and blacks, between whites and whites, between blacks and blacks, anything where you're penalized for your differences as opposed to being celebrated for what makes you different.
Exactly.
And that was so deep in Alice Walker's book that I couldn't have made Schindler's List had I not made The Color Purple first.
This sense of responsibility to these historical subjects and how you bear that weight and what in you counters that in a way.
Well, the weight that I bear, the first weight that I bear on anything that depends on research, doesn't depend on going deep into your own imagination, but just depends on research, is that the research is, accurate to my satisfaction within, I guess you could call it the confines of a dramatic play. Meaning there are things that I think are very, very important that we're not going to say that Lincoln, did not pass the 13th Amendment, but I will concede for drama that we do not do the roll call in alphabetical order according to state. Because if we had done that, all the people that Lincoln had actually lobbied, a couple personally, to change a nay to a yay on the vote for the amendment, came quite early in the vote. And so we did a little tinkering there, but I'm telling you, everything, so that's the responsibility. The responsibility is on Private Ryan. When I made the movie, I read a lot about D-Day, I read a lot about Omaha Beach, but it wasn't until I brought veterans into my life and I began talking to them, and they told me what it was like to hit that beach at 6:30 in the morning on June 6th. That was the opening 25-minute sequence is not based on anything I really read. It's based on what was told to me by men in their 80s who had been 18 to 22 when they hit that beach and had never seen action before. The thing that people do not know is that, the soldiers that landed in Anzio, the soldiers that fought in Italy, they had fought in many campaigns. Eisenhower picked green recruits to hit Utah and Omaha Beach. And he did that because he knew what the obstacles were, but he also knew that anybody battle-hardened might be the last choice to make that particular landing. He wanted new recruits who hadn't seen battle before. And that's why I think these guys were so rich in just their evocation of the incidents and their personal moments. One man told me, I didn't put it in the movie, but I have to just quickly tell this story. He was under such a fusillade of fire from the gun emplacements on top of Omaha Beach, and he was hiding behind a tank trap or a Belgian gate, and everything he said was blurry, everything he couldn't really see well. He had found out he had blood in his eyes, but he looked down and he picked up a handful of sand, and as he looked at the sand, his vision cleared, and he said, "Oh, isn't it interesting? Sand is made of individual granules," and he started studying the granules. And he couldn't hear anything because everybody went deaf within the first 5 minutes of landing on that beach. But just the detail of the last moments of what he thought was going to be his life, being wondrous, like a little boy looking at sand for the first time, brought him right back to his infancy. Details like that is what made that sequence important for me.
We trust you to make those judgments of poetic license, which are, of course, the judgments of a greater truth. And we are so grateful that you could share your work with us, of course, the whole country, but also to spend this time with us this evening. We are so grateful.
I'm very grateful.
So
I'm so honored by this honor. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steven Spielberg.
Thank you. I'm so honored by this. Thank you so much, my friend. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.